Hi, everyone. Welcome to Azure User Group Sweden. This is Jonah Anderson, and today Håkan is not here with me. But don't worry, we have a big crowd on stage coming today with our guests. So I hope that you're doing great and having a great weekend. And before I start, let me introduce myself. So I'm Jonah Anderson. I'm the founder of Azure User Group Sweden, and I work as a senior Azure consultant at Solidify, and I'm an active community member as Microsoft MVP and certified trainer. And I also host the sessions that we have here for this community. And before I introduce our guest on stage, let me just show everyone our code of conduct. So, in our community, we follow a code of conduct where we expect everyone, the members, the audience, the guests, to follow. So, be nice and friendly, respectful to others, seek to understand and not criticize, be curious and always be open to share your ideas, and be inclusive in your comments and questions during the live sessions and even the after sessions that we have. And we also partnered, or like we also have Azure Heroes for Azure Heroes learners. So if you are watching us today and you like to claim your digital badger, feel free to scan the QR code and then share it on your social media if you want. You can also add your skill with Microsoft Azure on your LinkedIn. And we do have a recommended learning path for the topic of the day, which is you can access on bit.ly ASUG Sweden ACD. And after a session, you will also have a chance to mingle with me, the host, and our speakers to ask questions and interact with us as well. So you can save this QR code or link later on. Okay, so let me just bring our guest speakers today. Hi, and we do have Martin and Christian with us. Hi, Martin and Christian. How are you
Hi,
doing
hi,
today?
Jonah. Fine, all good on my side.
Good. How is the weather? I know that you're joining us from Germany. How's the weather been like in Germany lately?
Quite too nice, to be honest. Too nice, too warm,
So nice.
but
I think there's like a barrier in the middle. We have in the north, there's like flooding and rain all the time, and close to the Alps, there's like 30 degrees. Yeah. So there's, and
Okay.
I'm in the Midwest, so it shifts very.
All right. Yes, that's great. Yes. So yeah, we did get snow actually this week
Ooh,
in Sweden. So it was like I thought it's still autumn, but I was surprised that it snowed. So it was weird to see the brown autumn colors and then the white snow on the ground. But
phew.
yeah, it's the weather, you know. Yeah, but before I let you take the stage and rock the stage, I will would like to properly introduce you to our watchers or members. So first, let me introduce Martin. Martin is the product manager for SAP integration at Microsoft. He is a C++ developer of the good old days and went all in with SAP integration as a consultant. Today, he is part of the Azure product management team, owning the SAP experience for the whole Microsoft product portfolio. And he is very active in blogging also about SAP and active in Microsoft community called Ninja Cat. Why Ninja Cat, Martin?
well, it's one of the like mascots at Microsoft that like transports
Alright.
that you need to be very precise and energetic in what you do each day, as well as not take yourself too seriously at times. Yeah? And that's
Yes,
one of
that's
our
right.
like female colleagues, Casey Lamson. She founded that, and the like the icon even made it into Windows until version 10 to be an official emoji. Yeah, so I really like identified with it and like took that on and put the Microsoft and SAP logo on it to make it my own. No?
That's nice. That's great. Yes, thank you. And our next co-speaker and co-partner of Martin is Christian. So Christian is Microsoft MVP for Azure. He is also working as a development architect at SAP. And he is a father, husband, in love with cloud native and serverless. And he is a SAP mentor alumnus and a SAP press author. So yes, so that's Christian and David. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Anything you want to say? First set of words to our audience watching us right now and saying hi. Actually, we have one saying hi already. Doctor said good morning from USA. And then Nicholas watching from LinkedIn. Hello, Ashish, our friend and member as well. And yeah, snow will be coming in Chicago soon.
And not go away till April.
Yes, that's right. Anything you want to share about the session to the audience as an introduction?
Well, expect some theory, and rest will be all live coding and seeing things
Exciting.
in action. Yeah?
Yes, also looking forward to learn more. So everyone that's live watching us, feel free to ask questions, share it, and anytime you can hop in and ask questions on the live stream, and Martin and Christian are going to answer them right away. All right, let me just go ahead and share the presentation. Is it ready to share, Christian?
Yep.
Okay,
I'm ready
great.
to go.
Let me just share it. And all right, the stage is yours.
So the slide is now visible, right?
Yes.
Great. Then once again, so thanks for having us for this talk about the Azure Developer CLI. So in the next 50-ish minutes, we will be on a journey to explore this Azure Developer CLI, or check if this asetdup command is this one command to rule them all. Now, as Jonah already did, we are two folks presenting that to you, so we will guide you through this journey of the Azure Developer CLI land. And I think I can already jump over that because everything is said already about me and Martin. So let's just dive into the topic. Now, if you are working in the Azure land, you certainly might ask yourself the question, ASAP CLI, do we really need another CLI? Don't we yet have enough CLIs like the Azure CLI, the CLI for static web apps, the Func CLI, and I don't know what. Now, the point is, let's take one step back and check which challenges are addressed by the Azure Developer CLI. So let's assume that we start in a new company or in a new team, and we want to start a new development project. Now, usually there are some steps that you have to do in order to get things going, in order to get productive. And let's walk through them theoretically. So first things first, if you're starting a new development project, maybe you're switching languages from C# to Node or something like that. Then you have to set up your development environment. That's kind of the first step that you have to do. You need to have the right versions in place. You have to have the right libraries and tooling around the ecosystem in place. So that's kind of the first thing that you have to do. Next is usually, I mean, I'm coming from SAP, as Jonah said. Usually we are dealing with business applications. So business applications are not that super different in every case and scenario. So probably you want to have some basic app setup that follows some best practices, that has some blueprints underneath. So you don't want to start from scratch with each and every app within your company. I think that's doable. That's a fair assumption. And then, as we are professional developers, we want to bring our stuff from our local development place to the cloud. So we want to have the necessary infrastructure in order to host our app, and also some bit more of the infrastructure that maybe does some monitoring or like that, while infrastructure is code. Then, of course, CI/CD. We also want to have CI/CD set up, and depending on where you're working, there are certainly some corporate guidelines that you have to follow when you want to set up your CI/CD environment. And last but not least, of course, also depending on especially the industry that you're working in, you will have to fulfill some baselines around security and especially compliance. So think about public sector or something around the chemistry area where you have very strict compliance guidelines that must also be fulfilled within your development process. Now that doesn't sound super complicated, so there are some steps that you need to walk through, but that sounds like a fair point to start with. Now, let's check how those steps are often applied in the wild. Now, that's my personal experience, what I saw in a lot of companies I worked for, where I also did consulting. And I have to say, it doesn't run that smooth usually. So when you start in a new team or even a new company, well, the first thing that you probably will get are some kind of manuals, how to set up your development environment. Of course, they're completely different per project. They might be written in a very nice manner. They might be written in a not so nice manner to help you set up your things. Well, then you also get usually some development guidelines, best practices, of course, in a medium that is not perfectly fitting for you as a developer. So Word, Wiki, if it's super fancy, GitHub Pages or SharePoint or something like that, where you have a lot to read and probably already have forgotten it as soon as you want to apply it. Now, the code area, we said, well, we would like some blueprints, we would like some templates. Well, maybe there are repositories somewhere in the company, and maybe they have some code samples, and maybe you know somebody who knows a repository that might fit, but you have no idea if they're outdated, if they are really compliant. There is no centralization about that. So that's not a cool starting point. And
that's usually the point where I call you, Christian.
yeah, because I know somebody who knows somebody. And if you have the code and you get it running, you have your app up and running somewhere on your local machine, then of course you want to set up the infrastructure. And from my experience, that also differs a lot. So maybe you have a per project approach. You often have to go from scratch. Then even within one company, you might have different CI/CD technologies that are used. So no fun up to now. And the fun will now really end or come to an end. And this might be something that where SAP broke me completely. Security and compliance. There are usually tons of wiki pages describing how to make things or what has to be fulfilled in order to make things secure and what are the compliance guidelines, but not a single hint how to achieve that within your code with some samples. So taking those two areas, how the world should be and how it usually is in reality, there is a big gap in between. And the question now is, wouldn't it be great to have one tool that would support you in solving all those challenges? And one setup that covers all those requirements and makes your life as developer easier. Now, if the answer would be no, the talk would be quite short. So from our perspective, yes, it is. And it's the Azure Developer CLI, this one ring to bind them all. Let's check what's behind that Azure Developer CLI. So I copied here a snippet out of the official documentation that describes the Azure Developer CLI. And if we take a look at it and check the highlighted areas, so the Azure Developer CLI should accelerate your local development, bringing it to the Azure environment. Okay, that's something that we also want to do. It provides best practices. It is developer-friendly, something that we definitely like, being developer-friendly and best practices. That's what we are seeking for. We have some CI/CD in place. Okay, cool. And AZD is built upon extensible blueprint templates. That's cool, because that's exactly one of the kind of requirements that we would have in order to streamline our development. And those blueprint templates do not only comprise the code that we want to have in our apps, but it also comprises the infrastructure as reusable parts. And last but not least, those blueprints are not only there and have to be used like they are, but you can either create new ones and use them or build upon the existing ones. So that's nice, at least from what's written there. Now, as we all know, as developers, this has to be kind of proven in reality, and the reality is usually the code. So let's switch away the slides and let's jump into well, kind of the code. First, the documentation. That's also one point where usually we will start. And let's check what the official help site, so the learnmicrosoft.com site, says about the Azure Developer CLI. So of course, here you find the section that I copied. Now, as a starting point, there is this typical AZD workflow. Now, how does this look like? So we have to select a template. Okay, that makes sense. We initialize it, and then we have this one command to rule them all to package, provision, and deploy the app. That doesn't sound too bad. Let's check what are the prerequisites. So are there any limitations with respect to languages and environments? And yes, there are some restrictions. So let's first check them. Of course, we need compute services in order to run our apps. So there are some compute services supported, and from my perspective, those are the usual suspects. So we have the app service, we have Azure Static Web Apps, we have container apps, we have Azure Functions, Kubernetes Service, and Spring Apps. And as we can see here, they are in different maturity stages. So most of, or a lot of them are stable. Some are in beta, which they already work quite good from my experience. And with Kubernetes, there is one restriction that is worth to be mentioned. So you can only apply that to projects that you can deploy with kubectl or kubectl, or however you want to call that. You cannot do that via Helm at the moment. And taking a look at the compute services, I mean, there are, from my perspective, a fair selection. Of course, there is then also a restriction with respect to the supported languages, which is the Node.js, Python, .NET, and Java. They are all supported in a stable fashion. So if our app development is making use of those compute services, as well as of those programming languages, well, we are good to go. And I think that's a fair selection. Now, first things first, of course, we have to install the Azure Developer CLI. And as you can see here, you have different options to do that. So there is a free choice of your operating system. So you have Windows, Linux, and Mac. And within each, you have support for the usual package managers. So on Windows, it's Winget and Chocolate. You can install it always via script. For Linux, it's the Debian package management, it's RPM. And for Mac, of course, it's Homebrew that you can use. And now for those of you who are running on or working with Macs, this documentation is not up to date at the moment. So if you're using Apple Silicon, you can use the script-based approach. You just have to add under the execution area the option to specify the architecture, which would be ARM64. And then you can also install the Azure Developer CLI on Mac running on Apple Silicon. So that's possible. No, not breaking your hands there. And of course, last but not least, dev containers are also supported and provided. So that's quite cool. Now let's check that out. What does the Azure Developer CLI do? So now we are in the terminal, and I have AZD installed. So let's check the version. The version is 1.4.2. So let's shortly cross-check if that's the up-to-date version. And AZD is completely open source. Everything is on GitHub. And let's check. 1.4.2. That is the latest one, so we're good to go. No update needed. Now let's see if ASAP can help us right out of the box. And well, there are quite some commands that we can use in order to leverage the power of ASAP. As you can see, the commands are grouped into different areas, kind of following your development flow. So first of all, you have to configure and develop your app. Okay, that makes sense. So we have here this init command that we already saw in the documentation. We have this template command, okay, to find and view template details. That looks promising. And you have some other stuff for authentication and managing configurations. Okay, I would say the usual stuff. And then when you have done your development, you of course have to deploy the stuff. You have to package the stuff, provision the stuff, or you just use this one command to rule them all, the ASAP up command, in order to bring your things to Azure.
I mean,
Also
Christian,
looks
here
good.
the biggest difference is that this is not only creating the infrastructure, which Azure CLI, for instance, does. It also gets my app up and running completely. So that to me was like the first thing where I noticed, okay, this is very different.
So this is kind of what comes on top. It's provisioning of your Azure resources plus deploying your project. So of course you can do that in two different steps, which, for example, makes perfect sense in CI/CD environments. But if you want to just get things up running quickly, then ASAP up is the command. And well, you have a bit of monitoring and pipeline setup that you can do via the Azure CLI, Azure Developer CLI. So let's check how we can start. And that's what I like about the documentation. Even within the terminal, you do not just get the commands and then have to figure out how the hell do I use them. We have here a really nice section around, okay, how do you get started? You have to ASAP init something, okay, and then do the ASAP up to get everything up and running. Now, in order to know what I want to init, I have to check this ASAP template list. So let's do that. Let's check what templates we have. And there are some. So by default, the template list is fetched from something that's called Awesome ASAP, which is a community repo that's provided by Microsoft, where you can, as a community contributor, contribute samples. And we will see that later because we did so. And it's even here on the first 3 hits. So that's cool. And with that, you see you have tons of templates that you can use, and you have here a clickable text where you can directly jump to the template. You can also check the details of an app. So via ASAP template show, where you get a bit more information, but not enough, at least not for me, if I want to check a template. So let's switch to this page, this awesome ASAP template library that is available. And here you find in a very nice way all the templates that are available. So let's start with, we want to have something in JavaScript. We want to have it hosted on, let's say, the app service. We want to have a MongoDB inside, and for infrastructure as code, you see there are 2 flavors that are supported, Bicep and Terraform. Let's go for Bicep. And well, that's basically it. And as you can see immediately, the search still has some flaws. So we have also some containerized stuff, which might or might not run perfectly, or Kubernetes stuff. I'm looking for one specific one. Yeah, so we have a React web app with Node.js and MongoDB. It's Microsoft authored. We can check that one. That's kind of one of the base samples that are there since the beginning of ASAP. And I think there are really nice examples because they are not super trivial. So it's not Hello World. It's really a to-do app with a front end in React.js, a back end, in our case, with Node.js. And you have some other features flying around that kind of are accompanied to the app and make the setup more production grade from my perspective. So I think we should check out this examples, and what you can do now is you can directly copy the AZD init command from this template gallery, put it into your terminal, and now there is one thing. If you want to try things out with AZD and you want to do an init, make sure you are in an empty directory. Because if you do that, the template will be downloaded. And you have to enter an environment name. Think about that as how you want to structure the setup, like dev test prod, where you kind of encapsulate all the parameters that you have. So let's test talk. What you can see now is we have now 149 files that have been added to this empty directory. If you would have done that in your home directory, well, those 149 files are in your home directory, and they are not that much fun to get rid of. Believe me, because I did it. Now, how does this look like? This is now the structure, and I already have my VS Code open. Please let me know if the fonts are not large enough.
Hi, I'm switching. I'm joining you guys. We have. I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have a question from Doctor.
Go ahead.
Is AZD the way to go set up ARM template?
So it's not a way to set up the ARM template, but it's a way to reuse Bicep or Terraform templates and then make use of them by provisioning the infrastructure. So you still have to do the crafting of your Bicep and your Terraform templates within the AZD project. But there are a lot of things that we will see in a second that will help you in setting up that infrastructure. So I hope that answers the question.
All right. Thank
you
so
much. Just drop in a follow-up question if that.
Yes, or join us on the Fika later after session and Zoom.
Or that,
yes.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get mentally back to the slides for a short moment. So the first thing that we had to do with a new development project was setting up the development environment. That is kind of limited fun if you're working in different projects, if you're using Node, and you have to support different versions. That's, especially on Windows, just pain. And what we see here is a very good friend of the developer, the development container, that is provided by the Azure Developer CLI. And as you can see here also is something that I like, no Docker container, no Docker magic that you have to understand. It's just a base image. And all the rest is installed via so-called features. So that's cool, including the Azure Developer CLI. You get some predefined extensions within VS Code or within GitHub Codespaces. Yeah, you have some default port forwarding. You have also here some hint for Codespaces, how much memory to allocate. So that's already great if you want to start developing. So you do not have to install anything locally except for AZD, which you could also run in a container. But you just have to have VS Code and Docker running, and then you're good to go to start with development. So big check mark on the first requirement that we had. Now, let's forget about a lot of files here, which are just, well, a license file, a README file, blah, blah, blah. The main point of the Azure Developer CLI project is here within this manifest file, this azure.yaml file. It is YAML, so, well, go away. It is YAML, yes, so yelling at my laptop style, but it is backed by a language server, which makes life a lot easier. So you have code completion, you have validation within this template, so that's good. And as you can see here, it's not super complicated. So basically what you have is a name for your project or your app. It's to do Node.js Mongo, okay. Then you have some metadata, which specifies the template that you used. Now, when you're working in the corporate environment, that's something where there might already ring a bell, because this is also something that you can use in order to check, hey, do my projects use some outdated templates or something like that? So that's super helpful already from the start. And then you define the services. So we have this to-do app, which has a front end and a back end. So this web thingy and this API thingy service. And as you can see here, you can specify where the source code lies. You can language server for the win. Also specify the relative path to the service deployment artifacts. You can specify the language. And as you can see here, you have type ahead. That's cool. Or our drop down in order to select it. Same, of course, for the host service. We could switch that. The app won't work then, but okay. So everything's supported there. That's cool, and it's quite comprehensive from my perspective. So you say, okay, my app has service A, B, C, D. The source code lies somewhere. It is the language XYZ, and the hosting environment where I want to deploy it is app service or AKS or whatsoever. So that's already quite good, because that gives you a nice entry point for checking out what's in the app. So let's take a look at the source area. You have the structuring in API and web. And then, well, if you're a Node.js developer, you have kind of a typical setup of your Node app with a package.json. You have a source code folder, maybe some configuration folder. You have ESLint configuration, something that I personally don't like, but that's kind of personal flavor, what you want to use there. So everything is in place and available. You have a project-specific git ignore file that's important to understand. So you have the git ignore file stacked throughout the project. So you have one git ignore file on the root folder, and then for each source code bit, your own git ignore file. And in addition, something that I always love to forget, you also have some tests pre-configured. So from a blueprinting perspective, that's already quite a decent starting point. You have a nice setup of the source code. You have tests in place. That looks good.
Yeah. Okay.
Now,
can I interrupt, Christian?
Yeah.
Yes, we do have a question from one of our audience. Let me show it to everyone. From Johan Nordberg. Could be as simple as changing the host property to switch hosting from app services to container apps?
So in this setup, it probably would work, because we have a Docker file within the source code folder. So then the Azure Developer CLI would know what to do. But if you would now have, let's say, the API defined as an Azure function, which a very specific setup of your function, and you would now just switch from hosting service function to, let's say, container app or AKS, then things won't work out very nice. So you need
at least not out of the box, right, Christian?
Not out of the box. You would have to add a Docker file there and specify how things could be built, and then you can just switch the host. But there is no magic in defining the hosting option, especially also with respect to the infrastructure definition. But of course, this to-do app is a perfect example here, because you have this app in different flavors. So you have it for every hosting option. So you can, if you want to go with Azure Container Apps, then you can pull down this template and start from there.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think CLI is ACD is also pretty new, right? I think there will be more features also coming up, as far as I know. Christian.
So,
yeah.
They are now, I think it's a bit more than a year. They went GA at Build this spring, and they are now on. They have a monthly release cadence. So every month there's a new release, and there is also a community call that you can join on YouTube. And from my perspective, I was never disappointed by any of those community calls. So they are really pushing out quite nice and useful features each and every month. So there is definitely more to come.
Yeah.
And there is also one feature that came out this month, no, I think last month, which translates your source code into infrastructure. So that's working at the moment for Azure Container Apps. So you can't just have your source code there, just your source code, no Docker file, and let AZD figure out based on heuristics how the infrastructure has to be set up. And instead of using Docker files, it's using cloud native build packs in order to create the container image.
That's like the first step, getting into existing apps and onboarding them into much faster into AZD. Yeah.
So that's kind of, if you're not on a greenfield approach, but on a brownfield approach where you have your existing source code and you want to bring the project into AZD, what do you have to do? And that's something that they're working on to make that as smooth as possible.
Yes. I'm also looking, just to add up, I'm looking at the documentation for the versioning and release strategy for this technology. So they do have, like, you can do the command ACD config list, then alpha for the alpha features and some beta features as well. So if you want to see it on the template, so that's also a good thing. Yeah, but I hope that answered your question, Yuan. Thank you for the question. We can let them proceed. Thank you.
Okay. So now we had the source code, and as Martin already mentioned, it's not just it's deployment of the app, but we also deploy the infrastructure. Now the question is, where within this manifest do we define the infrastructure? It's not there, right? That's because AZD makes a smart guess. If you have the infrastructure defined in Bicep, and if you put the infrastructure into a folder that's called infra, you don't need to specify anything here. If you want to use other naming conventions, you can specify an infra block, where you can then define the path where your infrastructure is. And you also can define the provider, which could be Bicep or Terraform. That's the two that are supported. So there is no support for Pulumi or something like that. But they are working on making that more generic so that you can basically plug in your own development in there and then maybe deploy to different infrastructure style. So due to that naming convention, the infrastructure is lying in the infra folder. And that's something that we also want to have, right? We want to have the infrastructure as code. We are professional developers. And there is already, I would say, non-trivial Bicep file available via this template, which sets up your resource group and does everything around setting up the app. It, of course, also sets up the database. And as you can see here, it's not just a simple Hello World app that somehow puts things out, but you have some first flavors of enterprise grade or professional setup in there, like you store the secrets in the Azure Key Vault. You already get wired up with the Key Vault access. You also have some monitoring available, and that's here with default log analytics base, application insights, and so on. And optionally, you can also bring in the API management if you want to. Now there are two things that need some closer checks. So we have here this core folder. This seems to be something that contains modules that are reusable at a first glance. And one thing that I really like is a bit hidden. It's here. The Azure Developer CLI already provides you with an abbreviations file that, according to Microsoft best practices, delivers you the prefixes for your resources. So no longer Wild West naming of resources, but a very clear guidance on how to deal with those things. And then let's check this core folder, because there seems to be a lot in there. And this core folder is kind of comprising all the reusable components of the Bicep deployment, from AI to databases to all the different hosting options, storage, search, whatsoever. So you have a lot of reusable snippets or modules in there that you can use in order to do your setup and have the thing that you have to craft quite streamlined. So if you take a look at this api.bicep file, this is the whole definition for this web app. And if you ever set up a web app from scratch, we can just check that. There's a lot more to specify, a lot more. And that's kind of hidden behind the curtains for you. And that's also something that I like, because that really helps you bring things forward. Now, one thing that you might ask yourself is, well, I defined my services here in the manifest file. I understood that. I have this infrastructure with this clever guessing. So AZD knows where my infrastructure lies, but where does AZD know that it has to deploy the API service to the web app that I defined, or to the app service that I defined within this module? Because it just says there is this app host service, right? Now, I tell you a secret. That's solved via tags. So what you see here is that every deployment of an hosting environment has this AZD service name tag attached to it. And this is the key, and the value has to be the service name as specified in the manifest. And this is how AZD brings things together. This is how AZD knows where to deploy what and how to wire things up. And this is also a very nice way to make errors if you don't name them the same way. Okay, so infrastructure as code, I would say there is a quite decent starting point with the Azure Developer CLI delivering us here. That's cool. Now, the last thing that we wanted was CI/CD, right? And the Azure Developer CLI provides two flavors of CI/CD. One is Azure DevOps, and one is GitHub Actions. So you have some predefined templates for that. Let's take a look at the GitHub Action part, where you have a complete setup defined. Of course, you have to define your credentials there and your variables, but then all the rest from setting up the Azure Developer CLI, now in this case also setting up Node, authenticating against your Azure subscription, and then provisioning and deploying the application is already there. And here you see you can just do an AZD up, which Martin will show in a second, or you really split that in first provisioning the infrastructure and then just deploying the app. But again, all is self-contained within this one repository, and all is doable via this one CLI that helps you in getting things forward. So with that, yeah, that's kind of a quick ride through the Azure Developer CLI setup and the template and how it looks like. So we have everything there. We have the development environment set up. We have the source code as a template. We have the infrastructure as code. We have CI/CD. Now that looks good from a greenfield perspective. Now the question is, can this thing also tackle really sophisticated setups? So that is nice. That is not trivial. But Martin, what do you think? Can we also do sophisticated setups?
Well, there's nice templates, yeah, and to me, sophistication that's quite close to when you have to deal with an integration project that involves SAP. Yeah? So that was the first thing we asked ourselves: can we make SAP Cloud SDK work with this? Yeah? And what else do we need? You know, the API management part was like one of the first challenges, and we wanted to make use of the new feature, the OData definition type in Azure API management. And the whole thing like provides all the components that we need, including the policy, because all the SAP folks are always like worried that you threaten the system at financial closing at the end of the month with too many calls. So the rate throttling is like the first thing that you can now like make sure it's always there, because the policy gets served from the repo and injected into Azure API management, all done by AZD up. Like you saw in the example before, you get the whole thing, the function, the SAP secrets, all wired up into the Azure components, the Cloud SDK deployed into the function, the API that points at SAP deployed into Azure API management. So we assume it's existing. So we're not bringing up API management each time. Yeah? We assume it's stable because that's how we see it, like it's how it's lived in the companies that we work with. But we inject the API through the lifecycle through AZD up. Yeah, so let's see that in action now.
I would say demo time, right?
Yes.
So now you have to share.
So entire screen 1. So there we go. This is the API we took in the AZD sample that all of you can also try out after the session. We're using the business partner API that SAP publishes in their sandbox, but it's identical with, likely identical with the APIs that you have in your own system, in your companies, or the companies you work with. And from here, it's very easy to get started. This is the repo that we work off. So it's all on Azure samples. You will find a QR codes on the slides right after, so you can jump there easily. But let's go back into code. Like you saw before with Christian, we have the function API set up in here, where we point at the OData URL. We have again some credentials, API key if needed. And when we look at the setup of the OData API itself, we define the definition type. We're loading the definition from the repo as well as EDMX file. And from here, there's the policies also linked as in here as a resource, where you'll find we put the rate limiting on Azure API management, as well as make sure that the response reflects the correct host name, since it's SAP like it's must behind the API in Azure API management. And all of the things that you saw on the drawing there, so set up here, we just type AZD up. We provide an environment name. And then I will type in my resource group or my subscription first, and then bring it back. So I'm deploying in East US 2. And then we'll see now the whole life cycle going through. It's now packaging all the resources that it finds, and then starts the provisioning of each component. And there we'll see this is reflecting all the things that you saw here, the function, service plan, etc. So let's see what it starts with before we move on. And this goes through usually in a couple of like minutes, depending on what you have there. You see here my last run from this morning. My whole application, including infrastructure from scratch, was like deployed in 4 minutes and 19 seconds. Here it starts with the resource group and the app service plan. And then at the end, once you see it finished, there will be a nice surprise for you that Christian coded into it just for the fun of it. So from here, this is using SAP's Cloud SDK for Node.js to do the actual OData call. This is very easy to use. It's also open source, free to use on Azure. You can start generating your service information and binding through those commands. And then it gets you all the things you find in here in the source folder of the repository. What I like most about it, it really gets you, let me scroll up here. A speed up in the implementation with the SAP backend system. It already knows what the APIs are, what the specialties are about the OData requests, what entities are there. So you don't have to think about all of this. You get it out of the box.
May I interrupt, Martin?
Yeah, of
we
course.
do have a
Go ahead.
question from U1 again. Does ACD create an app registration in Azure and add keys to GitHub automatically, or is that something I need to do myself?
Yeah, app registration is actually like one of the items that we have on the repo that we want to do next, because the authentication, of course, comes next, right? So when we look at the setup here, this is really something that we would like also to be automated here. there's a couple of ways of doing it. We are currently checking to do it with a hook, right, Christian? Where we then run the necessary commands.
Exactly. So you have to do that manually. You have to add something to the Azure Developer CLI setup, as Martin said, which is called hooks, which is a way to enhance the flow at specific entry points of the flow, like after provisioning, before deploying, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we want to do the app registration.
Yeah, so, definitely doable. There's one example, I think, out there in the wild, but we will be adding it for this case as well, yeah, where we then again inject the trust into the app registration that is identifying the API management, so that you get the whole flow, including the OAuth parts, configured out of the box. But yeah, that's the next thing on our agenda for this.
And the same is then true for GitHub. So if it does not automatically create any keys or something like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for the question, Yuan, and for the answers. Thanks.
Yeah. Then let me show you here what you get then. Yeah. The API that gets injected into my API management instance is this one here. It again lists all the things you saw on the SAP API Business Hub. You also get the policy injected here. Yeah, you see there's the rate limiting, and on the outbound, there's the find and replace. Yeah. And then pointing at the endpoint that you defined in the bicep template. And let's start from the resource group. You find then in here all the things that you saw on the drawing that Christian described. And on the configuration of the function, you will see that it's pointing towards the key vault, which has the SAP credentials to make the request. So you see once it's deployed. So this is actually then pointing through Azure API management with all the policy that we defined at a SAP system. And now it's still loading here. There you go. Point coming from the sandbox environment. We have the same thing running also on Azure App Service. So we have both flavors. But since Jonah is invested in the functions topic before today, let's focus on the Azure functions mostly.
Yeah, but it should have been then a durable function, right?
True. Yeah. And from here,
well, so durable functions, I speak a lot.
Durable functions for the win. Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, all right.
So just want to give you like a proof point that this actually went through. This was not something mocked. Okay, don't have the request in here yet. Yeah? But you will see that the one that I did before the session, it's not in the logs yet. So it's not real time always. You will see that the request actually went into API management as configured in the system, and then goes into the API that SAP provides for everyone to get started as easy as possible. And this actually is a completely functional app with all the things involved. Even though it's a rather sophisticated setup with many components involved, and it gets you all the things required to have a proper setup here, to have this enterprise ready. It uses API management, targets SAP, uses SAP's Cloud SDK, has the key vault to manage the functions, the secrets, and all the monitoring involved to have this set up as a proper extension project. One of the use cases I mentioned was a simple inventory check. This is something that I see customers implementing into their landscapes, where they want a simple and easy but enterprise-grade setup with a function to make such a simple check and provide that into a web shop, for instance. All right, back to the slide deck, Christian.
Okay. Tell me when you see the slides.
We do.
We do. Okay, then do you want to take it from here, Martin?
Yeah, so this QR code points at the GitHub repo that we just presented beforehand with the SAP Cloud SDK. But from there, you will find like multiple links how to get started. Also, where to get your hands on a SAP mock server, the API Business Hub. So that's one of the biggest challenges usually when people say, okay, let's use this with a real SAP system. We provide you with all the things to get started as a developer. So you don't need to talk to any SAP basis people, get like access there. You can really have something that is really close to reality from there. Yeah?
Right. We do have one question before we proceed. One of our loyal community members, Nico, so from Sweden, Malmo, Sweden, I know. Fantastic and very useful session. Have you identified any things you can't do with ACD yet? Interesting question, right?
That's a good question. So there,
Yeah.
Well, we're still like trying new things, right? Like the app registration question beforehand, yeah. Anything that wasn't provided out of the box is doable. If it's doable by scripting, it can be triggered from the hook. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I believe it might be not feasible or it might be too complicated, but you would always get there. Yeah. If it's scriptable. Yeah.
So that's kind of the biggest point we will have that funnily later in the slides. Its hooks are super powerful, especially for those scenarios. So if ACD does not yet have a certain functionality, you can always hook yourself into the flow with some shell scripts. Having said that, I personally do not yet have, let's say, a very good procedure feeling ideas about how far should you go with hooks and where should you just say, okay, let's solve this in another way, like in a different step in GitHub Actions or I don't know what, because the flexibility is basically infinite. So if you can put it in a shell script, and you could probably put a lot into shell scripts, you can solve it.
Yeah.
But that also means that you might overload ACD with complexity that you don't want to have in there. So it sounds a little bit esoteric.
Standardization goes away
that's,
then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think.
I have something to add. If you're done, Martin and Christian, I spoke about. I'm also fascinated about ACD. Like when it came, so I had the opportunity to share about it in-person talk in Microsoft Build Sweden last month or recently. And then after my talk, I got an interesting question from an architect from one of the big companies in Sweden, and then he asked, how does ACD works with multi-cloud scenarios? And that was an interesting question that I couldn't answer right away because it's a like preview and all is new. But I'm curious if you had that. I mean, in relevance to this question, if you had that perspective, your own perspective in terms of multi-cloud scenarios with ACD.
Yeah, maybe we add two things there. Yeah. So, for instance, there's the upcoming tech conference that SAP hosts each year, SAP TechEd, where we'll be like orchestrating this through Terraform. Yeah? So one part goes into SAP's PaaS platform, SAP Business Technology Platform, and one into Azure. And we do this with Azure Developer CLI in both worlds, but with the Terraform flavor. Yeah? So to get to support both worlds. But other than that, ACD is like targeting Azure, Azure Developer CLI. So but we have a new like project coming up now. So maybe you can share some more there, which is Radius. There was like announcements this week, I believe, that went through social media. I had only a first glimpse in it. If there's a resource that you want to open there, Christian, and maybe put some more there. No?
Oh, that's not it. Let's make it easier.
That was like a drone, right?
Yeah, that was a drone. That was definitely not the one. But
yes,
I have a weekly newsletter.
But maybe we can we can program some drone with ACD.
You have shell scripts.
Yes.
Well, if it's running our edge components, then.
Yeah.
Here we go. That's kind of the announcement blog post by Mark Rusinovich. And this Radius or Project Radius is targeting multi-cloud, including Edge. And it's brand new. And it kind of has some overlap with ACD. So I did not yet figure out where the boundaries are or if there is no boundary. But this is something that you can use for multi-cloud. I think at the moment it's Azure and AWS that's really working. And funnily, that's something that I did not know. It comprises a bicep style that allows you to deploy to AWS. So you have to install a dedicated plugin for bicep on VS Code that is specific to Radius, where you can then craft infrastructure recipes, as it's called here, to target AWS. So that would probably be the project that you want to look into if you have massively multi-cloud setups to manage.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting for SAP because they run their PaaS platform on all the hyperscalers, as well as try to be agnostic with this. And us at Microsoft, we always try to have APIs for all the stuff we offer, so that you can integrate from wherever you want to, because the pull is towards the application service. So there's no need to log in or anything. So that's why you get open APIs this way.
Okay, that's great. Nico said thank you for the answer. So he did add a comment as well. As you read, a challenge I currently have is creating a logic app that sends email. That bad boy needs a connection to a Gmail account, meaning auth being federated from third-party bicep fails. Yes.
Authentication,
Okay.
always the fun part.
Yes, it's not easy everywhere. So it's a complex, and you just learn by doing.
Yep.
All right. Yes. Great presentation. I'm not sure if we're done, but we're getting a lot of feedback already. Yeah, please go ahead.
That's cool.
Yes.
So I think we can skip that one because we already saw it. So we have this template library that I presented live, so to say. And that we already can come to our take on AZD. So Martin, do you want to close it?
Yeah, my pleasure. So we really saw that it's speeding up our development work, and to support that, we shared the SAP Cloud SDK sample on the Azure samples, really complete with all the things you need: CI/CD, secret handling, monitoring, as well as reusing stuff that is stable, like the API management service, and all of that already in a stable way, so that we rarely hit any roadblocks, and if, then they're very fast addressed by Savannah and team on the AZD team.
So that's something that I really have to underline. So the support from the AZD team is really great. So they are living open source, and they're really open to feedback. They want to bring things forward. So that's perfect.
Also, maybe in line with the comment earlier, that what can't be done or where should you take it, the feedback that you share with them makes it into product if it's or it's asked by other people as well. Yeah. So you will always have the option with the hooks to do whatever you need if it's special to you. But if you give feedback that you need something and others are also doing the same, it's really making its way into the monthly releases. How many PRs did you open yet, Christian?
To the AZD per se, quite some. Yeah. So they are open for PRs. So they are open source. So there is no barrier for you to contribute, because there are a lot of good ideas, and of course the team has only so many persons in there, so they have to prioritize. But they know that some stuff would be nice to have it, and so they are completely open to contributions. And you can also then ping them and say, hey, is this the way how you would want to see it in the CLI, or would you do it in another way? And then they give you feedback, and they are completely open to those contributions. And yeah, as we already said, that also kind of fits to the question with are there barriers, or are there some gaps or limitations? Or there are some things where I personally would like to have more experience around how, where, when to use the hooks and to what extent, and how to best structure the CI/CD area. Because you can, of course, for example, put in to the hooks a check that triggers the tests and checks that all tests have been executed before deploying the app, which would you usually would do within the CI/CD setup, but you can also do that in AZD. Are there some downsides if I do it in AZD? I don't know. So that's something that I would like to see, to have more experience, simply because then you know what to do and when to do what.
Okay.
Cool.
We have one more question from you. One again.
Right.
Can you request and wish for new templates?
You can even contribute. So
Yeah.
you can request for new templates, but well, it's open source, so it's just one pull request away. Now contribute. Here we go. So you can contribute, and then you even get featured on this page. So you can contribute new templates. There is a template for the templates for this website. That sounds funny if you say it out loud. Which has to have a specific structure, and then open a PR, and they will review it, and that's it. You host then your template on GitHub somewhere, and you're good to go. If you are within a company, you can even spin up kind of your own template library and bring that into AZD. So you can make AZD point to your template library with your maybe curated set of templates. And then within your company, you exclusively make use of your templates that you have maybe went through some quality checks or something like that. And have that and make sure that only those are used.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I think that would be the last question we will take. And then if you have more questions, please feel free to join us on our Zoom meeting. We usually have it after session, so you get a chance to talk, mingle, freestyle with us offline on Zoom. So, and then we got a feedback from Nico Davis. Awesome session. Thanks. And
Thank you,
yes.
man.
Okay. Was
Yes.
a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Yes. And here's the additional link for learning resources to get started.
Yep. Oh,
The incognito.
nearly.
The inception, I mean.
Yeah, I was nearly in the inception, but I
Yes,
made it.
yeah, you were.
I just yeah. So those are the links. So I think we sent you the slides, or if you tell us, Jonah, where to share them, we just put them there.
Yep.
We have
Yes,
all
please.
those
Yeah,
links.
feel free to share that one. I'm gonna post it also in our meetup page, so everyone. And then when I share the recorded sessions, this is recorded, so we will be resharing this as well. So that's great. I do really appreciate your time, Martin and Christian. A really awesome session. I myself work with this, new to this as well, and I really learned a lot of perspective on this session. So I'll definitely gonna share this session when I speak at Sweden next week about the same topic. So
Cool.
you two have inspired me. So I'll be your advocate in the in-person one in Sweden. Yeah. So to those, do you have anything else, by the way, for our audience watching us live or recorded later? Anything, any events that you want to share, how they can connect with you and all other great things?
So I think we both are basically on every kind of social network. As you can see from our tags, we are on X, or how it's most called, Twitter, on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with us, just ping us there. That's easy. And as Martin already mentioned, there is the biggest tech conference, kind of the build in the SAP world, where Martin has this hands-on workshop that will also take place virtually. And I think Martin also has a virtual session.
Like
at this SAP
a
Tech
colleague
Lab.
of mine will do it. Yeah, Martin Schulthoff will be running it, since I'm in Bangalore for the hands-on. So I will be there with the developers, but she will be there on the virtual live stream doing the stuff. Yeah.
So as it's virtually, you can sign up there, and yeah, have some SAP fun.
Yes.
Mixed with Microsoft.
Is that something that you can also share with this list later, so I can
I can add
after
that,
the session? So maybe some will be interested to join that one.
Sure.
SAP session.
There
Okay.
will be Azure
yeah.
Developer CLI won't be on the virtual one, but the I can recommend looking at Ignite. Yeah, that's coming up in November. There will also be roundtables where you can also meet engineering, including me, to talk to like the people on the ground at Microsoft. Yeah, so looking forward to that one. So we'll add that there as well. Yeah, so Packet plus
Packet
Ignite.
and Ignite. Yeah, I'll do so.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. And to those that want to join us, feel free to save this bit.ly link or scan the QR code after we log off, and connect more and ask questions later on Zoom. Okay. So I think it's time to say goodbye for now for the live stream and continue later. So yes, so thank you so much, everyone, and have a great weekend. See you again in 2 weeks for our next session coming up. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.